Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back for a Tuesday edition of the Steel City Sports Report, where we talk everything Steelers, Penguins, and Pirates. I am your host, Brady Vini, and we are back talking Pittsburgh sports once again on this beautiful Tuesday evening. As I said, got a lot of interesting things to talk about today. Pittsburgh Steelers interested in another quarterback prospect in this upcoming draft. A reported fractured relationship between the Steelers and one free agent quarterback spells the end of this guy's chances being in Pittsburgh. Got an update, somewhat, kind of, on the status of Pirates pitcher Jared Jones and a response from Jared Jones's father as well. That started some beef on Twitter between two guys who cover the Pirates. Going to get to that in a moment here. As always, I would appreciate it if you like, comment, and share this stream. Feel free to comment in the live chat. Just like Lester here, Malik Willis would make a great addition to the Steelers team. We can see if we can trade Calvin Austin in a 2026 fourth-round pick. Malik Willis still with the Green Bay Packers, to my knowledge. I am going to say it's going to be a hard pass for me on that front. Malik Willis, happy that he found success with the Packers after beginning his career with the Tennessee Titans. Also, didn't he bounce around to another team too? I'm unsure. I don't think so. But going to be a hard pass for me on Malik Willis. I think if you're the Steelers, unless it is the San Francisco 49ers giving you Brock Purdy on a, pretty equal deal, I am not going to touch any member of that 2022, any quarterback of that 2022 draft class with a 10-foot pole. Because, just go over the names. Kenny Pickett, Malik Willis, Sam Howell, Matt Corral. The list goes on and on and on. And, who would have thought that the most successful quarterback from that draft class would end up being Brock Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant at pick 262. So if y'all just would give me a minute real quick, gonna get my banners in place here. Okay, we are just about ready to get underway. If y'all would just give me a second here. All right, so we are going to start off the day with this right here. The Steelers are not going to be bringing back this quarterback. I'm going to tell you who that is here in a second. Bob Labriola, writer works for the Pittsburgh Steelers, said this on the reason why the Steelers have not re-signed Russell Wilson. Of course, for those of you who may or may not know, earlier this offseason, Steelers owner Art Rooney II, pretty much down to general manager Omar Khan, and even Mike Tomlin, I'm sure, said that heading into this offseason, their two top targets in free agency were going to be Justin Fields or Russell Wilson. Justin Fields obviously was the main target there, but he ended up taking more money and a better opportunity to be the guy with the New York Jets and his college buddy Garrett Wilson. So that then left Russell Wilson. But many are asking if the Steelers said that they were looking to bring back one of those two, Fields or Wilson. With Fields gone, why isn't Wilson already back under contract with the Steelers? Well, Labriola said, quote, "The fact that that hasn't happened leads me to believe there is a fracture somewhere in the relationship between the Steelers and Russell Wilson too deep to overcome." And I think we all can remember and, come to an assumption of where that fracture is. That fracture is between Wilson and offensive coordinator Arthur Smith and even head coach Mike Tomlin. Now, Tomlin, big Russell Wilson guy Tomlin was, and he benched Justin Fields and stuck with Wilson. Turned out to be the right choice there for a couple of weeks until it wasn't. And we all thought, oh, Russ being a Steeler, that was all Mike Tomlin's doing, and he's, Mike Tomlin's guy. Well, was is the key word in that sentence right there, in that belief. I believe Russ then became, as the season went on, he became too erratic and too risk-taking with his style of play, and really where the fracture was with Arthur Smith, even though allegedly they spent hours together after practice, away from their families, going over the playbook, going over the game plan, all that good stuff. Russ doesn't fit the Arthur Smith offense. And part of that is because of just who Russ is at this stage in his career and the style of play that he's always played in, throughout his football life. Russ isn't, the guy that would go off of play action a bunch and he can either scramble for a first down or chuck it 80 yards down the field. Still can chuck the ball, but his mobility, should I say lack thereof nowadays, that is pretty much, taken him out of consideration for the Arthur Smith offense. And I mean, just he isn't fitting the Arthur Smith offense anymore. Smith clearly wanted Justin Fields. That's a no shocker that Fields was Smith's guy. And now that he's gone, Steelers are looking for, better options. And not discrediting Russ the person. Russ the person is awesome. Sure, you can, bash him for his sometimes toxic positivity. And by toxic positivity, I mean, like, if you watched Hard Knocks when the Steelers, I believe they lost their last game of the season, and Russ was talking with a Cam Hayward who just looked sick as a dog and didn't really want to be around anybody at that time. Russ goes up to him and says, hey, let's win the next 4, of course, being the playoffs and winning the Super Bowl and all that. And, sure, he's got some toxic positivity, but he's a great guy off the field, takes time at the Children's Hospital and all that. And I wish him best of luck wherever he goes, maybe a little bit less so if it's the Cleveland Browns. I only wish him, not as good luck 2 times a year when he would play the Steelers if he were to join the Cleveland Browns. But it's just things have soured here in Pittsburgh. It was a good relationship until it wasn't, and that's unfortunately just how things go. Moving on here to the next topic of today. Going to make this a quick live stream here today before the Pittsburgh Penguins game here in about 50 minutes. Steelers interested in another prospect quarterback in this year's draft, and as you see there in the banner, it is Quinn Ewers. Texas held their pro day this afternoon at, I believe, 2:00, and multiple reports say that the Steelers showed interest in Ewers, and they met with him in Austin before that pro day today. It'll be is interesting to see. Don't know who all was down there, Steelers representation wise. I do know Mike Tomlin was not down there for Texas's pro day, but I'm sure the Steelers were well represented down there. There were also some other names down there. Isaiah Bond, a wide receiver, and Matthew Golden, 2 wide receivers there. Golden, could be a first-round pick come April. Isaiah Bond, you're looking more towards the middle rounds for him. 2 wide receivers that I'm sure the Steelers are interested in, even though you have DK Metcalf and George Pickens. And then in the slot, you're going to have Roman Wilson and Calvin Austin. You can never have too many wide receivers after last year's debacle at the position, especially after George Pickens got injured. Jahdae Barron, a corner down there, going to be a first-round pick, probably, if not an early second. Probably not going to be, on the Steelers' radar. at their pick in the first round unless, certain cards fall a certain way. But, maybe he could be a Steeler later down the line if he becomes available. You got another safety, and Andrew Makumba there, probably going to be a late round pick. Steelers could, use maybe a fourth safety to put behind Minka Fitzpatrick and Juan Thornhill and Deshaun Elliott. Running back, Jaden Blue. Not my top running back option there for the Steelers in the draft, but still has had some production in college. And then 2 defensive tackles down there in Texas that the Steelers have been confirmed to have interest in. That is Alfred Collins and Vernon Broughton, 2 guys that the Steelers met with at the Combine. But focusing, more on Ewers here, they met with him before his pro day. And then another report here, Steelers Draft HQ on Twitter, which they've been on, whoever runs that account, they've been on top of, a majority of the Steelers news this year. Apparently, Ewers also scheduled for a top 30 visit to Pittsburgh, so you can add him to the list of top 30 visits. I think he's the second quarterback that's going to have a top 30 visit with the Steelers to go along with Tyler Shuck from Louisville. But I have the list of top 30 visits here somewhere. I'm just not going to go through it again. I did that yesterday. If you want to go watch my live stream from yesterday, it's there. But looking at Ewers' profile here, he's 6'2", 210 pounds, 22-year-old junior. Was pretty good fending off a hot quarterback prospect in Arch Manning, who could be top of the draft pick next year when the draft is in Pittsburgh in 2026, but had a 65.8% completion percentage, threw for just under 3,500 yards, had 13 touchdowns to 12 picks. So, a weak quarterback draft class, but still had some decent production and could be, a late day 2 pick, maybe early day 3 pick for the Steelers if they're looking to add a quarterback. I still think right now, if I'm the Steelers, predicting what they're going to do in the draft, I'm doing it under the assumption that Aaron Rodgers is going to be the Steelers starting quarterback, and then Mason Rudolph the backup. So Ewers maybe, could be a QB3 for next year, maybe even be a backup when it's all said and done. But again, don't think right now that the Steelers, unless, this Aaron Rodgers situation and saga carries out until, maybe we're a week out from the draft, don't see the Steelers taking a high quarterback until then. But Quinn Ewers could be, maybe a pick that you look for the Steelers to take in the 5th round or something like that. So be interested to see what you guys' thoughts are on Quinn Ewers possibly being the Steelers draft pick. If I had to go right now, just off the top of my head, I have a document, going to be using it on draft night. I hope you guys join me back there. I will be live for at least the first night of draft night. That Thursday might be live as well for night 2 as well, rounds 2 and 3 on Friday. But if I had to go right now off of my top, quarterback prospects, Cam Ward's number 1. That's, the consensus number 1 quarterback in this draft right now. Surprisingly, I have Jackson Dart as the number 2 quarterback prospect in this draft above Shadur Sanders. I think Shadur Sanders is going to go well before Jackson Dart, but, I think Shadur Sanders has a ton of problems that, have been issues in this Steelers offense. That's holding on to the ball too long, taking a lot of sacks at Colorado, trying to play hero ball. And I don't think that's what the Steelers need. So I put Dart above Shadur Sanders in that ranking. My number 4 quarterback's Jalen Milroe. And then beyond that, I'm open to, any and all options and ideas. I put guys like Quinn Ewers, Tyler Shuck, Will Howard, maybe Dylan Gabriel. I'm looking here at the list of quarterbacks in this draft, but after the first four quarterbacks, which I think are a consensus, Cam Ward, Jackson Dart, Shadur Sanders, Jalen Milroe, I think quarterback number 5 in this draft that the Steelers could possibly take. It's open for discussion then. Just going to hit on a couple of other loose end Steelers notes here today. Steelers officially did claim offensive lineman Lecitus Smith off waivers from the New England Patriots. That news came down yesterday, but Adam Schefter, who's the top NFL insider, officially confirmed that 2 hours ago. Of course, we all know Aaron Rodgers was in Pittsburgh in the Steelers facility on Friday, this past Friday. And with that, the Steelers, it was thought of that the Steelers missed out on Michigan's pro day. Of course, Michigan has some good defensive prospects too that I think the Steelers would heavily consider taking at pick 21. That is defensive tackle Kenneth Grant and corner Will Johnson. So, you had the Steelers, Mike Tomlin, Omar Khan. They were in Pittsburgh meeting with Rodgers on Friday during Michigan's pro day. Wasn't sure if there was any Steelers representation in Ann Arbor for Michigan's pro day, but as it turns out, defensive coordinator Terrell Austin was there. So, any reports or rumors that there wasn't any representation there was false. Colin Cowherd and Acho from various football outlets, those statements from them are false. And then this one here isn't really Steelers news, but it is Steelers divisional opponent. The Baltimore Ravens got stronger in their secondary. They signed corner Chidobe Awuzie of the Tennessee Titans, formerly was with the Cincinnati Bengals. That's why that name may sound familiar to you folks. So Awuzie went from the Bengals and, had a good stint there, went down to Tennessee, which, his stint there, I don't think wasn't as good. You can probably easily assume that the Titans are picking first overall for a reason. So the Ravens get stronger. I think, looking at their first round, speaking of the Bengals and Ravens, let me just say this. It would not shock me in the least bit if all 4 of the AFC North teams went defense with their first round picks in this year's draft. As much as I hate it, I hope that the Tennessee Titans do something other than take Cam Ward first overall in this year's draft, because then the Cleveland Browns would, be stupid and take Cam Ward. But if Cam Ward goes number 1, I think it's a lock that the Browns are going to take Abdul Carter, the best defensive player in this draft. And I hate that because I think he's going to be an elite player in the NFL. And you pair him with Myles Garrett, you hate the idea of those two teaming up. Baltimore Ravens, Cincinnati Bengals, they're probably going to go defense as well, whether that is secondary or defensive line. They spent all that money on T. Higgins and Jamar Chase, so they're now paying Burrow, Chase, and Higgins on the offensive side of the ball. They got to invest in the draft and hit on some of these guys on the defensive side of the ball in the draft. At that point, pick 17, you're looking at maybe a Shamar Stewart from Texas A&M or a Mike Green from Texas, I believe, or I think it's Texas, Mike Green from Marshall, or, some other defensive lineman around that part, maybe even Will Johnson, corner from Michigan, who I just said, if he's available. Steelers, I'm all aboard the idea of taking Kenneth Grant. If not Jackson Dart at that point, quarterback. But Kenneth Grant is a name you're going to hear a lot in mock drafts leading up to the draft in April. And then as for the Ravens, I got this idea from the mock draft I did on last night's live stream. I think they're going to take secondary. They're going to go secondary in their first round pick. I would hate for them to take Nick Emanwari, safety from South Carolina. Dude is a massive physical freak, well over 220 pounds, 6'3 safety, and Ravens would definitely be better on the back end. So you got, a physical freaking Amanwari next to Kyle Hamilton. But yeah, so Steelers, that's pretty much it for the Steelers news here today. Not much brewing on the Aaron Rodgers saga today. It's been too quiet, kind of like how it was last week before it was reported he was in Pittsburgh on Friday. You got to wonder, is Rodgers, really thinking about, other options, retirement or the Giants, or, still hoping that the Minnesota Vikings think twice about passing on him. But, I think, it'd be a very Aaron Rodgers thing for him to announce he's going to the Steelers at the Pat McAfee show, live show in Pittsburgh on April 9th. But, yeah, just not much, oddly quiet on that front. And, I hope business picks up. Maybe he visits with the New York Giants. They signed Jameis Winston, but that's just an insurance policy, just like the Steelers signed Mason Rudolph to be their starter in case things with Rodgers fall through. But, time will tell. Hopefully we get more news, because kind of hard coming on here and talking about anything other than Aaron Rodgers going to the Steelers at this point. I'm starting to, maybe open up to the idea again of Rodgers being the Steelers quarterback. If the Steelers are going to reach their highest high, best quarterback out there that's left for you to do that with is Aaron Rodgers. If you're going to reach your lowest low, also the best quarterback out there to, possibly do that with is Aaron Rodgers. So we'll have to see how things pan out there. So now we are going to move on to some Pittsburgh Pirates talk, and we did today get an update on Jared Jones. So Pittsburgh play-by-play broadcaster Greg Brown, been there forever, joined Andrew Filipponi and Chris Muller on 93.7 The Fan just a couple of hours ago. And while taking questions, he said, quote, "It's going to be a while. It's not good news," when talking about right-handed starting pitcher Jared Jones. As some of you probably already know, Jones was pulled from the rotation just about a week ago now after experiencing right elbow discomfort. Now, upon hearing that and hearing that he and the Bucs were going to be seeking a second opinion, we all are thinking the same thing. Tommy John. Nothing has been confirmed yet by a team reporter or the Pirates themselves, but we have to think that something like this, let me start over here. Nothing has been confirmed yet by the team or a team reporter, but we have to think that it is something that where Jones missing the entirety of the 2025 season could be a possibility. And, we all kind of feared that this was going to happen eventually, just not this soon. Jones isn't built like a tank like Paul Skeens. He's barely 6 feet tall and only weighs $190. So with that way he throws, he's more injury prone. And I hate to say this early into a guy's career, but maybe Jones just isn't built to be in a rotation. And I hope he proves me embarrassingly wrong. On that same note, I think Jones would be perfect as a closing pitcher, honestly. I mean, in a closing role, David Bednar, he is still a big question mark heading into the season. The Bucs don't have a concrete ninth inning pitcher right now, and Jones, in a closing role, he could still throw gas and still have electric off-speed stuff, and he doesn't tax his body with the schedule of a rotational pitcher. But, However, I am going to say let's pump the brakes and hope that things aren't as bad as they currently seem. Maybe Brown over exaggerated, Jones's status, and maybe there's something positive going on behind the scenes because Jones's dad, Keith, just within the last hour, posted on X, quote, "Wanna bet, hashtag God is good." So maybe Jared Jones, he's got sources, source being his son, who I'm sure, he's been texting and calling with during, this past week. So it's up now. Who do you believe more, Jared Jones's dad or Greg Brown? Sure, both are hearing, you know, things on Jared Jones, probably different, but, which just wishing Jared a speedy recovery, and we hope that he resumes throwing soon. I'm not going to doubt him because he seems like the type of guy that overcomes odds no matter how insurmountable they may seem. So just going to say, can't wait to see that guy back on the bump soon, making batters look silly. But in the meantime, if Jones is going to miss the first couple of weeks, if not more this season, Bubba Chandler or Thomas Harrington, two top pitching prospects in the Bucs organization, both are just about ready to get up to the MLB level. And, I think they could come up and more than fill in for Jared Jones in the meantime. Just a couple of other notes from Browns' time on 93.7 The Fan. He did say that he expects backup catcher Endy Rodriguez to be the opening day first baseman in Miami on Thursday, but that the position will be filled out by whoever is swinging the hottest bat at the time until Spencer Horwitz returns. And that Paul Skeens is ready for Thursday. He's like a raging bull waiting for that door to open, and that Skeens thinks that he can throw up to a lofty 240 innings this season. 240 innings, lofty goal, very high number. I think if you're Skeens, you're looking more around the 200 to 210 mark there. I think Mitch Keller, he only pitched 192 innings last year as a guy who was with the team in the starting rotation throughout the whole year. So we'll have to see what that happens, if that's a possibility. I'm not doubting Skeens there. If anybody can pitch 240 innings, it be him. He's built for it. He's got the frame and the mentality to do it. And, I'll tell you what, I can't wait to see Skeens get out there on Thursday, especially after this quote right here that he gave 2 days ago, which I'm going to read to you right now. Skeens said, quote, "I think we owe something to the city. We owe a lot to the city. It's our job to go out and win for the city because this is bigger than all of us. There's a reason why Kutch keeps coming back, and specifically to Pittsburgh. There's something about this city. We saw it last summer. We've seen it in the videos of the wild card game. I'm tired of watching them because it was a wild card series. The bar needs to be set pretty high. Not taking anything from those guys. The fact that that's a golden era of recent Pirates baseball, that needs to change. We owe it to the city." I almost get chills reading that because it has been too damn long since a Pirates player has said something like that. And that to me is sending a message all the way up the food chain to manager Derek Shelton, up to general manager Ben Cherington, and even up to owner Bob Nutting. Skeens is the perfect guy to do that. You have a generational talent that cannot be wasted by the ineptitude of this front office and this owner. And we saw this similar thing in, I believe, the early 2010s. The last time the Bucs were in the playoffs in that span from 2013 to 2015. You had top guys on the team like Andrew McCutchen and even guys that they brought along in free agency like Russell Martin and AJ Burnett. Those top guys, they went and they came out and said stuff like that to get Bob Nutting and the general manager and front office at that time to add to the team and invest around them. And, you then saw the Bucs go out and get, guys like Marlon Byrd at that time and really, made made the playoffs and had a good shot of having success in them. And now with Skeens, like I said, this generational talent, you have Skeens, you have Mitch Keller, you have Brian Reynolds, O'Neal Cruz, and, you know, hopefully Joey Bart continues his stuff. You got the pitching there. It's about going out and getting the right bats. You have some bats, like I just said, Reynolds, Cruz, Nick Gonzalez, maybe Joey Bart. Love to see Endy Rodriguez break out with the bat, but you need to invest more so that we're not clinging on to 1-0 leads, 2-1 wins every single outing from this, you know, great starting pitching staff. So, you know, anything less than a World Series appearance with Paul Skeens, I'm going to say it right now, you know, anything less than a World Series appearance with Paul Skeens before he, I think, inevitably goes to the highest bidder because baseball economics suck, that would be a colossal failure. You know, I hate every single day and year as a Pirates fan thinking of, I hate that, you know, my enjoyment of watching Paul Skeens, there's always the voice in the back of my head, in the back of all Pirates fans' head of saying, yeah, but we don't have enough faith. We don't have any faith, as a matter of fact, in the front office or the owner that's going to do the right thing to build around this guy. And he's eventually going to leave one day. And that's because this organization sucks. And baseball economics sucks ass too. But, you know, that's a conversation for a different day. Let's just hope that the Bucks' first step towards that goal of making a World Series appearance one day with Paul Skeens begins on Thursday, which I'm going to say right now, I hope you all join me back here on Thursday at 4 p.m. as I will be live for instant reaction and analysis to the season opener. So I hope you guys get to join me back here then. And real quick, just going to pop this up. Not much Pittsburgh Penguins news here this evening. They're about to take the ice here in the next half hours against friend turned enemy Jake Gensel and the Tampa Bay Lightning down there in Tampa Bay. Tristan Jarry gets the start again. Gotta find out who is the starting goaltender for the Lightning. Is it Vasilevsky? Is he even healthy? Yeah, okay, it is Vasilevsky. So Penguins going to have their work cut out for them. Andre Vasilevsky and the Lightning. Lightning good. Very good this year. Just bought at the deadline. They're going all in. Happy to see Jake Gensel still having success. Keep proving, you know, game by game that he wasn't just a product of Sidney Crosby. Still a 30-plus goal scorer down there in Tampa Bay this year. So be an interesting game to watch. No real changes in the Penguins lineup. Sidney Crosby, I think he's 3 points away, if I'm correct, from breaking Wayne Gretzky's record of most points per game seasons. Most point per game season at 20. So just grateful that Crosby still producing like he is at 37 years old. And with that, I'm going to thank you all for joining me here this fine evening. We'll be back again around this time tomorrow evening, hoping for some more juicy news on the Pittsburgh Steelers front after pretty lackluster day of news today. So with that, thank you all for joining me. Like I said, like, comment, and share this video. Subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and I will see you guys back here tomorrow. Thank you. Have a good night.